My name is Serena Caldwell, 34 years old. If you had asked me a few years ago, I would have said I'd done everything right. I'd carved out a career as a marketing director for a fashion company in Madison, Wisconsin, built a six-figure salary from the ground up, and even bought a three-bedroom house in the suburbs. It wasn't just for me. It was for my younger sister, Brooke. After our parents died in a car crash 3 years ago, I wanted to give her stability, to be the anchor in a world that had fallen apart. On paper, it looked noble. In reality, it was complicated. Growing up, my father, Robert, had been my biggest cheerleader. He'd sit with me at the kitchen table late at night, going over math problems, his hand steady on my shoulder as he told me, "You can be anything, Serena. A doctor, a lawyer, even a CEO. You've got the brains for it." His faith in me was like a torch, one I carried through every exam, every presentation. But my mother, Patricia, believed in comparisons more than encouragement. Her words were knives that didn't bleed right away but left scars. When Brooke struggled with her grades, she'd snap, "Why can't you be more like Serena?" When I took things too seriously, she'd sigh, "Look at Brooke. She's creative, fun. Not everything has to be about achievement." We grew up as competitors in a race neither of us had signed up for. I brushed it off back then, too focused on proving myself. I didn't see how deep the cuts went for Brooke. After the accident that took our parents, the weight of responsibility fell on me. I was 31, Brooke was 25, and she could barely get out of bed. She worked part-time at a clothing store, her paychecks barely covering gas money. I wanted to step into Dad's role, to be her shield, her safe place. So I bought the house, $100,000 down payment, a mortgage that stretched my income but felt worth it. Brooke cried when she moved in. She hugged me, whispered, "I'll make it up to you someday," her voice small and broken. I believed her. For months, I paid for everything, the groceries, the utilities, her phone plan. "You focus on finding your path," I'd tell her, echoing Dad's words. She'd nod, though sometimes I caught flickers in her eyes, envy, maybe resentment, but I ignored them. I thought I was giving her a second chance. I didn't realize I was planting the seeds for a fracture neither of us could undo. Life kept moving. My days were long hours of campaign pitches and client meetings. Brooke drifted between part-time jobs, often home by the time I returned, curled up on the couch, scrolling on her phone. I told myself she was grieving still. I told myself love was patience. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, everything snapped. I was rushing down the stairs at work, mind tangled in the details of a new fashion launch. My heel caught on a loose step. In an instant, I was weightless, then slamming against metal railing. Pain exploded through my leg like lightning. I tried to stand, but my right leg buckled, a sickening crack reverberating through my body. The hospital lights blurred above me. Dr. Walsh's voice cut through the fog. "Fractured femur, shattered ankle. You'll need at least 6 weeks in bed, maybe 3 to 4 months for full recovery. 6 weeks, maybe more. Bedbound." I remember staring at the ceiling that night in the hospital, the reality crashing over me. All my independence, my control, stripped away in seconds. I'd have to rely on someone else for everything, for water, for food, for survival. That someone was Brooke. She moved her things into the living room to stay closer to my bedroom. She brought me meals, propped pillows under my leg, fetched my laptop so I could work from bed. "I've got you," she said, her smile gentle, but her eyes unreadable. For the first week, I believed her. For the first week, I let myself feel grateful. But by the second week, I noticed it. The way her sighs grew heavier when I asked for my charger, the sharpness in her movements, the muttering under her breath when I needed help with simple tasks. Once, when I spilled water on the sheets, she snapped, "You need to be more careful." Her tone was clipped, her gaze sharp. I told myself she was just tired, stressed from juggling her retail job with taking care of me. I told myself not to be ungrateful. But a voice inside whispered the truth I didn't want to hear. My sister resented me. I pushed it down. I told myself love could withstand cracks. But love, like bone, can shatter when enough pressure is applied. And soon I would learn just how deep Brooke's resentment ran. The house felt different once the pain meds became routine and the days began to stack like plates no one bothered to put away. Morning to night, my world shrank to a bed, a tray table, and the exact square of ceiling where a hairline crack snaked like a map. I couldn't stop tracing with my eyes. I learned the choreography of asking, water, pills, a blanket, my laptop. The blue charger, not the white one. I tried to make my voice small and neat so it wouldn't take up too much space. At first, Brooke moved easily through these requests. She kept a notepad on the dresser and wrote down times. Meds at 8, stretch at 10, lunch at noon. She'd fluff the pillows and say, "Better?" And I'd smile too quickly, eager to be the kind of patient who didn't make anyone regret loving me. But care calcifies when it isn't chosen. By the second week, the notepad was gone. My charger started appearing just out of reach, coiled on the dresser like a dare. I'd extend my arm and the ache would bloom in my ribs. "Could you?" I'd begin. A sigh, an eye flick away. "I heard you." When I spilled water on the sheets, she stood at the doorway and said, "You need to be more careful," like I'd done it to her on purpose. When I asked for a different pillow because the seam cut into my neck, she swapped it wordlessly and tugged a little too hard, my leg jolting under the brace. "Sorry," she said, too fast for it to be anything but punctuation. I told myself she was tired. Her retail shifts had doubled because she wanted to pick up overtime, she said. I offered to pay more of her expenses short-term until we found a rhythm. "No," she said, flat. "I'm not a charity case." The word lodged under my skin and stung every time I moved. Work became my escape hatch. I propped the laptop against my thighs, camera angled to hide the hospital white pillows and the ugly arc of my brace, and led campaign calls with that brittle cheerfulness people mistake for resilience. "We'll push the spring line's digital pivot," I'd say, voice bright. "Lean into the high contrast photography. Yes, like that." I watched my boss's face flicker with concern, then professionalism, then relief when I delivered on time. Leaving the meeting, I'd exhale and stare at the room like it had grown while I wasn't looking. Brooke's footsteps carried a new rhythm, shorter, sharper. I learned the sound of her annoyance the way you learn the weather. The slapped cabinet, the fridge opened with more force than necessary. The spoon dropped a little too hard into the sink. Once, when my pill bottle rolled to the floor and rattled under the bed, I asked, "Can you reach?" She crouched, retrieved it, set it on the nightstand with a thud. "I'm not your maid," she murmured, almost to herself. Almost. "I didn't say you were," I answered softly, because softness is how you buy time. The third week, Wendy came by. She didn't knock the polite way. She knocked like she always had, 3 quick taps and 1 loud one, and then the door swung open on her laugh. "I brought Honeycrisp apples and gossip," she announced, dropping a bag on the chair and leaning over to hug me around the brace. She pulled back, taking me in the way she takes a brief, quick, thorough, nothing missed. From the kitchen came the sound of a drawer sliding too far and slamming. Wendy's smile thinned. "How's our other roommate?" "Busy," I said. Wendy glanced at the nightstand. "The way the water's placed," she murmured, nudging the bottle into easy reach, "feels like a statement." "She's helping a lot," I said, too fast. "It's a lot." "Both can be true," she said. She reached for my laptop, checked the battery, plugged it in. The blue charger clicked home, the small mercy of it, a bloom of warmth in my chest. "Tell me what's not true." I told her about the sighs, the mutters, the way I could feel Brooke looking at me and seeing a balance sheet. I did not tell her I'd woken 2 nights in a row to the sound of my own name in Brooke's mouth like it was a bitter rind. Wendy's hand found mine. "You don't owe anyone your pain to be loved," she said. "Watch her and watch you." That night, long after Wendy left, I woke to a voice in the living room. Low, sharp, too fast for sleep. I slid my phone from the pillowcase and checked the time. 12:11 a.m. The hall light bled a thin strip beneath my door. I didn't want to eavesdrop. I'd promised myself we were not that kind of household, but the words arrived anyway, disobedient. "It's exhausting," Brooke hissed, pacing. I could hear the soft thump of her socked feet. Doing everything for her, she rings a bell and I jump. A beat. The other voice muffled. "Monica?" "But she bought the house, right?" "So what?" A brittle laugh. "She flaunts it. Like, I should be grateful forever. Like I owe her my life. I don't owe her..." The rest blurred, but the shape of it landed. I pressed the heel of my hand to my sternum until the pressure staved off the tremor. A part of me, the part with my mother's voice, thought, "There it is, the daughter who resents the good one, because the good one keeps winning." Another part thought of my father, who would have sat Brooke down and asked her to name the hurt instead of the symptoms. I lay there and let both ghosts talk until the ceiling crack stopped looking like a road and started looking like a fracture. In the morning, Brooke moved quietly, eyes circled in sleep. She handed me coffee, black, the way I drink it when meetings start early. "Thanks," I said. She stood a beat too long, then moved away. The apology never came, but neither did the stab. That felt worse. I would almost have preferred a fight. Fights you can answer. In the afternoons, when the pain ebbed to a dull river and the house went still, I would think about the day we moved in, the two of us painting the guest room a laughable oyster white we both swore looked gray. Brooke had dotted my nose with paint, and I'd chased her down the hall with the roller, both of us breathless and ridiculous. I thought of her tears when she first unpacked in the room I said was hers forever. "I'll make it up to you someday." I thought, too, of our mother's voice, years earlier, turning us into opposites until it felt too late to climb back. I tried to offer small truce tokens. "I set up a grocery delivery for your favorites," I'd say, showing her the app. "Also, I moved the due date for the phone plan. Less annoying." She'd shrug, say, "Cool," and leave the room without taking the phone from my hand. I couldn't tell if she didn't see the olive branch or didn't want it. One evening, a storm rolled in from the west. Fat drops that smacked the patio and then softened into a curtain. The light went bruised and beautiful. I asked if she would help me stand for 5 minutes to look through the window. Not because I needed it for my leg, because I needed to remember the sky still moved. She came in, lifted under my elbow with practiced care, and we stood together, quiet, while water raced down the glass. "I miss them," she said suddenly, voice small, and for a moment her head tilted toward my shoulder, the way it used to when she was 8 and didn't understand fractions. "Every day." My throat went tight. "Me too." She let go a fraction too soon, and I had to catch myself on the window frame. "Careful," she said, her voice snapping back like a rubber band, and the small opening closed. The 4th week, my doctor adjusted my meds and the edges of everything sharpened. I noticed the way packages arrived with Brooke's name on them: shoes, a jacket, a box with a brand I knew from my clients, and the weight that screamed money. I told myself she'd treated herself after overtime. I told myself it was none of my business. That's the trouble with narratives. Once you write one, you keep editing reality to match it. Wendy texted a photo, a half-built ramp from the driveway to the front step. "Contractor says Friday. I'll swing by to supervise, or they'll try to upsell you on a handrail made of gold." I smiled and typed back gratitude until my thumbs ached. It was easier to lean toward the people who steadied me than to look squarely at the one who did not. A week later, near dawn, I woke to a sound like glass, set too hard on wood. In the sliver of light, I saw Brooke's silhouette at my dresser, her hand hovering over my purse. It was a second, maybe 2, and then she withdrew, soft-footed as a cat, and the door sighed shut. Maybe she was moving something for me. Maybe she was tidying. Maybe I'd dreamed it. I lay back and tried to wrap the doubt around me like a blanket and pretended it warmed. The next afternoon, during a Zoom with a client who loved the phrase thought leadership more than he loved air, my banking app flashed a push notification. Large transaction posted. My stomach folded. I smoothed my face for the camera, said, "Yes, we'll send the mood board by Thursday," and clicked the red leave button. The heat in my leg pulsed in time with my thumb, hovering over the banking icon. I didn't open it. Not then. I told myself, tomorrow. I told myself, don't look until you're standing. I told myself a lot of things. That night, the house felt too small for 2 beating hearts. Brooke cooked pasta in silence, set my bowl on the tray without a word, left the fork handle pointing away from me so I had to twist. An old habit in me, older than kindness, made me say, "Thank you." She nodded without looking. I lay awake for hours, listening to the low hum of the refrigerator and the odd tick of the baseboard heater, and the way the wind gathered itself and flung itself at the siding. I thought of my parents' faces the last Christmas before the accident. Dad carving roast, Mom complaining about overcooked carrots, the normalcy that now looked like gold. I thought of my promise to Brooke when she moved in. "I'll keep you safe." The longer I stared at the ceiling, the more the crack above me looked like a line on a seismograph. Pressure, pressure, pressure. In the morning, the coffee was too strong. The charger was back on the dresser. The notification glowed like a coal on my lock screen. "I need you to grab something for me," I said finally, because speaking is a kind of bravery, and I'd been saving mine. Brooke leaned in the doorway, arms folded. "What now?" My pulse thudded. "My phone," I said, and when she handed it to me, I opened the banking app with a calm I did not own. Numbers populated, crisp and indifferent. A charge I didn't recognize. Another. The question rose to my tongue and stayed there, a bird trapped behind glass. "Everything okay?" she asked, a notch too casual. I looked up. The house held its breath. Not yet, I thought. Not yet. But soon. By the 5th week, the tension in the house was no longer hidden in sighs or sideways glances. It pulsed in the air, a low-grade fever I couldn't sweat out. My body was healing in millimeters, but the distance between Brooke and me stretched into miles. It happened one morning, quiet at first. I balanced a mug of coffee on the tray while scrolling through emails, trying to ignore the throb in my leg. My hands shook from both pain and fatigue. The cup tipped. Hot liquid spread across the sheets, seeping into my brace. I froze. Brooke was in the doorway, arms full of laundry. The look on her face, disgust sharpened into fury, made me wish the coffee had burned me worse, so I'd have an excuse for the tears stinging my eyes. "We're not your servants," she snapped, setting the laundry down with a slam. Her voice was raw, like this wasn't the first time she'd said it, just the first time she'd let it out. For a heartbeat, silence pressed down heavier than the blankets. I stared at her, my chest rising and falling too fast. And then something inside me snapped, clean and final. "You have 5 minutes," I said, my voice lower than I'd ever heard it. "Pack your things and leave." Her jaw dropped. "What?" "You heard me," I said, louder now, adrenaline drowning out fear. 5 minutes. The words cracked the dam. Brooke dropped the laundry and stormed closer, her voice shaking with rage. "You think you're better than me because you pay for everything? Because you bought this house? You've held it over my head from day one. I gave you everything." My voice shook too, but it wasn't fear, it was fury. "A roof, a home, no rent, no bills. And you treat me like this?" Her eyes flashed, and for the first time I saw not my little sister, but a stranger. "You don't know what it's like living in your shadow. Perfect Serena, the golden one. You got Dad's praise, Mom's comparisons, the career, the house. What did I get?" "You got me," I whispered, "and it wasn't enough for you." Something bitter twisted her face. She snatched my phone off the nightstand. "You think you're so untouchable? Then explain this." She shoved the screen toward me. My banking app was open. Notifications I'd ignored out of exhaustion now glared back. Transfers, luxury purchases, thousands drained. My stomach dropped. "You took my money?" Her shoulders squared, defiant. I deserved it. For once in my life, I wanted something nice. Something that wasn't yours. I stared at her, the betrayal colder than the pain in my leg. "You stole from me while I lay here helpless." Her laugh was harsh, hollow. "Helpless is all you've ever seen me as. At least now I have something to show for it." I pointed to the door, my hand trembling but my voice steady. "Get out, now, or I call the police." She stood there a moment longer, her face twisted with every grudge she'd ever carried. Then she spun, yanked a bag from the closet, shoved clothes inside, and stormed out. The slam of the front door rattled the frames on the wall. The house fell into silence, except for the slow drip of coffee cooling on my sheets. I sat there, breath shallow, realizing the fracture between us wasn't just in words, it was in trust. And trust, once broken, is a wound that never heals the same way twice. I had lost more than my sister that morning. I had lost the illusion that love could fix what resentment had already claimed. The silence after Brooke left was deafening, like the walls themselves had absorbed her bitterness and were holding it, echoing it back at me in every creak of the house. For the first time since my accident, I was completely alone. My leg ached under the brace, the coffee stains had dried into the sheets, and I couldn't bring myself to move. Wendy showed up that weekend, her arms full of takeout and her eyes full of questions. She didn't push. She just set the food down, opened the curtains to let the pale winter sun in, and sat beside me. I told her everything, the fight, the theft, the words that had cut deeper than any fracture. Wendy listened quietly, her hand resting on mine until I finally let the tears come. "She was supposed to be all I had left," I whispered. Wendy squeezed my fingers. No, Serena, you're all you have left. That's enough. We started cleaning the house together, or rather, Wendy cleaned while I directed her from my wheelchair. She opened drawers, folded clothes, sorted through Brooke's scattered things. In the middle of it all, she held up a small, dust-covered USB drive. "What's this?" she asked. Curiosity pushed past my exhaustion. We plugged it into my laptop, and suddenly, a grainy video filled the screen. My heart stopped. There were Mom and Dad, sitting on our old couch, smiling like they'd been waiting for us to find this. Alicia, Brooke. Mom's voice was soft, but steady. "We want you to love each other always. Be there for one another, and make us proud." Dad nodded, his hand on Mom's. "You're both strong. Build something beautiful together." The video ended. Silence wrapped around us, heavier than before. I couldn't breathe. Tears blurred my vision as guilt clawed at me. Had I failed them? Had I broken the one promise they'd asked for? For nights after, their words haunted me. I replayed them in my head when the pain kept me awake, when the loneliness pressed down too hard. I told myself Brooke's betrayal justified my anger. But what if I had been too harsh? What if I had pushed her out when she needed me most? The questions circled until I couldn't take it anymore. With Wendy's help, I dug into my bank accounts. Really dug, line by line. What I found stripped the guilt bare. $10,000 gone. Not just a few splurges, not just mistakes. Deliberate transfers to cover Brooke's credit card debt. Charges for luxury clothes, jewelry, a spa weekend. Even as I lay helpless in bed, she had drained me dry, building a life on my dime while muttering that I was a burden. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd let myself admit. Wendy sat beside me as I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. "You didn't fail them," she said softly. "Brooke made her choices. This isn't on you." Her words should have lifted me, but they twisted into something darker. Because if Brooke could betray me like this, what did that say about the bond we'd built all those years? Was it ever real, or had it always been a fragile illusion, held together by my sacrifices and her resentment? That night, I dreamed of Mom and Dad again. But instead of warmth, their faces blurred, their voices distant. I woke with the cold certainty that some promises can't be kept, not when the cost is your own survival. The numbers on the bank statement still haunted me, rows of transactions Brooke had made while I was bedridden. It wasn't just theft, it was betrayal with intent. $10,000 siphoned into her debts, her luxuries, her desperate attempts to live a life I was unknowingly paying for. I wanted to believe there was still a piece of the little sister who used to braid my hair and beg me to read bedtime stories, but the evidence on my laptop made that impossible. Wendy sat beside me, her voice calm but firm. "Serena, you can't carry this alone. You need help, real help, not just me showing up with takeout." That's how I found myself logging into my first virtual therapy session with Dr. Daniel Carter, a family trauma specialist. His office was warm in the background, bookshelves, soft lighting, but it was his steady tone that cut through my shame. "You're carrying too much weight," he said after I poured everything out. "Your parents' expectations, Brooke's resentment, your guilt, it's not all yours to hold." I wanted to argue, but the truth sat heavy in my chest. Dr. Carter gave me a task: journal every day, even if just a few sentences, to separate my emotions from Brooke's choices. It felt ridiculous at first, but after a week of writing, I began to see the pattern. Every entry circled back to guilt, not anger, not sadness, but guilt that I hadn't been enough to save her. But slowly, Dr. Carter's words sank in. "You didn't break this bond alone." Meanwhile, I took practical steps too. With Wendy's help, I filed a fraud report at the bank. My hands shook as I signed the documents, but there was a strange relief in it, like drawing a boundary I should have drawn years ago. The bank rep explained that Brooke's accounts would be frozen, her credit flagged. For once, she'd have to face consequences of her own making. Still, the guilt lingered. At night, I replayed that old USB video of Mom and Dad, their plea for us to love each other, to stay united. Their voices were an ache in my bones, but every time I thought of giving Brooke another chance, I remembered her words. "You're a burden. I deserve this." Wendy wasn't just my friend now. She became my anchor. She rearranged the house so I could navigate with my wheelchair, set up a ramp at the back door, even convinced me to hire a home care nurse, Pamela, who brought kindness into the space that had been poisoned with resentment. Pamela helped me bathe, managed my brace, and reminded me, gently, that healing was more than just physical. "You've survived worse than broken bones," she said once, her eyes kind. This? This will pass too. Physical therapy came next. Jason Reed, my therapist, pushed me hard through the pain. Parallel bars, resistance bands, sweat dripping down my face as I learned to trust my body again. Each step was a reminder I wasn't helpless anymore. And yet, even as my leg grew stronger, my heart wavered. In quiet moments, I caught myself wondering, if Brooke walked through that door tomorrow, could I forgive her? Would I let her back in? Or was closing the door forever the only way to save myself? The truth was, I didn't know. But for the first time, I was starting to believe I deserved a life not defined by her choices. 6 months after Brooke stormed out, I found myself standing in the backyard for the last time. The grass was neatly trimmed, the for sale sign staked firmly in the ground, but to me, the house felt like a mausoleum. Every wall carried echoes of slammed doors, muttered resentments, and broken promises. I'd fought to keep it, telling myself it was the last piece of stability I had left. But in truth, the house was a weight. It had been the stage where my generosity turned into her entitlement, where my love was twisted into leverage. Selling it wasn't just financial, it was survival. With Wendy by my side, I signed the papers. My signature looped across the page like a release. My new apartment downtown was smaller, brighter. Floor-to-ceiling windows spilled light across a modest living room. The balcony overlooked a park where kids ran and laughed, and where weeks later I would take my first tentative jog after therapy. It wasn't the sprawling house I'd once thought I needed. It was enough. Brooke never called, never texted. The silence between us was deliberate, and for the first time, I didn't rush to bridge it. Through a mutual friend, I heard she was struggling, working double shifts to cover her debts, her credit ruined from the fraud investigation. A part of me ached at the thought, but Dr. Carter's voice echoed, "You can't control her choices, only your boundaries." So I didn't reach out. I deleted her number, blocked her on social media, and stopped torturing myself with what-ifs. Instead, I poured myself into rebuilding my life. Wendy hosted a small housewarming party, filling the apartment with laughter and clinking glasses. My college friends sprawled on the couch, reminiscing about late-night cram sessions. For once, the sound of joy didn't feel foreign in my home. It felt earned. Work flourished too. I threw myself into new marketing campaigns with a focus sharper than ever. My boss noticed, handing me projects that pushed me back into the spotlight I'd almost lost. Late nights at my desk were no longer about survival. They were about ambition. And my body healed. With Jason's relentless therapy sessions, I shed the brace, then the crutch. The day I jogged around the park, slow, uneven, but free, tears burned my eyes. Wendy jogged beside me, her voice bright. "You're unstoppable now." She was right. In quiet moments, I still thought of Brooke, of the USB video where Mom and Dad begged us to love each other. I wondered if I'd failed them, if they'd be disappointed. But then I'd remember the theft, the cruelty, the way she'd stood in my doorway and called me a burden. Some bonds are broken not by a single choice, but by a pattern of them. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop trying to fix what someone else is determined to shatter. On my balcony one evening, I watched the sun sink low over Madison, painting the city in gold. My heart was still scarred, but no longer hollow. I realized then, family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up, who respect your boundaries, who choose you as much as you choose them. For me, that was Wendy, Pamela, Jason, even Dr. Carter, whose words had carried me through nights of doubt. Brooke had made her choices, and I was finally making mine. To choose peace, to choose myself, to walk forward, even with a limp, into a future that was mine alone. The first night I slept in my new apartment without waking from nightmares, I realized something had shifted inside me. For months, I'd carried the weight of guilt like a chain, convinced I'd failed my parents, failed Brooke, failed myself. But now, lying in a sunlit room filled with boxes half unpacked and a plant Wendy insisted I needed, I felt lighter. It wasn't that the pain was gone, it was that I was no longer letting it define me. Brooke was still out there somewhere, piecing her life together, or not. The last I heard, she was working late shifts, her debts catching up faster than she could run. A part of me hoped she'd find her footing. A bigger part of me knew it wasn't my responsibility anymore. I had carried her long enough. Dr. Carter reminded me in one of our last sessions, letting go doesn't mean you stopped caring. It means you stopped destroying yourself, trying to save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Those words stayed with me. So did the memory of Mom and Dad's video. I stopped watching it on repeat, stopped torturing myself with their voices. Instead, I kept one still frame, a moment where Dad had his arm around Mom and they were both smiling at the camera. That image sat on my desk, not as a burden, but as a reminder of love in its purest form. A reminder that I had known it, and I could build it again in other ways. And I did. Pamela remained a friend long after I no longer needed her care. Jason, my physical therapist, became someone I still met for coffee, our conversations ranging from rehab exercises to life goals. And Wendy, my anchor through it all, was still there every step, laughing with me in the park, sharing takeout on Friday nights, reminding me that chosen family could be stronger than blood. My work thrived too. The campaigns I led drew praise not just for numbers, but for creativity. My boss pulled me aside after one pitch and said, "You've come back stronger. Not everyone does." I smiled because I knew he wasn't just talking about the campaign. One Saturday evening, I hosted friends in my apartment for the first time. Music played softly, glasses clinked, and laughter filled the air. Standing by the window with Wendy, I looked out at the city lights and realized how far I'd come. I wasn't the bedridden woman begging her sister for water. I wasn't the daughter trapped by her parents' impossible expectations. I wasn't even the woman defined by betrayal. I was Serena Caldwell, whole, scarred, but free. If you've ever had to choose between protecting yourself and holding on to someone who keeps hurting you, I hope you hear this. You are not selfish for letting go. You are brave. You are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to heal. Family isn't who shares your blood. Family is who shows up, who lifts you up, who doesn't call you a burden when you're at your lowest. And sometimes the most important family you'll ever find is yourself.